Halli Casser-Jayne, and welcome to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, where along with my partner in politics, former White House correspondent Matthew Cooper, we slice and dice all things politics, and some days, Donald Trump too. This week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, it's sex and coronavirus in the city. In a conversation you won't want to miss, we take a much-needed breather from politics and turn to sex, when I catch up with the irrepressible author of Sex in the City, Candace Bushnell, and we discuss her latest book, Is There Still Sex in the City? But we begin with Matthew Cooper and our weekly take on the political scene. Here we go. Welcome, my friends. Here's where we are this week. 85,000 dead American souls. A number, by the way, that is lower than the respected Dr. Fauci believes is the real number. 1.42 million Americans confirmed cases. What did I just say, Matt? Here we go. 1.42 million confirmed cases in America. 1.42 million. I mean, the numbers are astonishing.
Right.
Right. And what else do we have? One in every 42 seconds, somebody is dying from this dreaded disease in this country, and 36.5 million. Let me say that third time. 36.5 million Americans are unemployed. 1 in 5 million children are going hungry in this country. People are on the streets, dying. Body bags are starting to show up, but you know where, Matt? We talked about this a little bit last week, in trucks that are parked in areas throughout some of our cities. Welcome to America 2020. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Halli.
Do I
sound like it's going okay? It's all working out.
Do I sound depressed? Right before we started recording, a friend of mine posted on Twitter that she had just collapsed into hysteria. This is a woman who was the most steely person that I know. I'm not kidding you. And she said she just collapsed into a crying fit and asked, does anybody else like that? You know, these are hard times, and
yeah, I think a lot of people do. Yeah,
and everybody's being very brave and brazen, some, and trying not to be cowards and being accused of being cowards when they're trying not to be cowards. And there are two stories in this that I want to talk about. First, obviously, the story of the virus and what's happening and how we're responding to it. But there is also this other, human story. And that's how Americans are responding to it. And I think that in part is because of the way it's being handled by our leader, which is, it's not. You find out the power of a presidency when the presidency isn't working properly, because you compare this to an FDR heading, a country going into the most horrid war of all times versus where we are with a president who's separating us. And I think people really are starting to get hysterical. And I wonder what happens when you get to hysterical mass. Your thoughts?
Well, by hysterical, you mean angry at Trump, or you mean
I think there's
apoplectic over the situation? Or
I think it's all of the above. Wisconsin's going to have more crazies getting out on the streets today. In other parts of the country, people are on one side are going out and demanding, that their bars be open, this, that, and the other thing. But this is the beginning of hysteria. And whether you're coming at it from being a liberal or a conservative, quote unquote, I put that in quotes because these days under Trump, I don't know that those typical definitions apply. But if we say red state, blue state, that more or less, puts us where we are in separation. I feel an underlying hysteria starting to happen, and I'm worried that it's going to get out of control if somebody doesn't get out front and start taking control of what I think Trump is trying to gin up.
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I think when you have, militia types showing up at the Michigan State House, armed to the teeth, demanding the head of the governor, that's not good. And when you have people ignoring social distancing when all the evidence is that you shouldn't ignore it, that's not good.
And then you have state houses where you have that are controlled by Republicans saying, a 3-2 vote last night. Was it Michigan? Or Wisconsin? It was Wisconsin.
Yeah, the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin overturned the stay-at-home order of the Democratic governor.
A governor that the President of the United States said, all governors, you're in control. And then he goes to the State House and says, stop the governor. In a state he needs to win, by the way. Desperately.
Right, very much so. Very much so.
So, you get into some crazy here.
No, absolutely. Look, I mean, it's, it's super worrisome about the tug on the social fabric of the country. And it's, it's very worrisome. I will say that the lifting of various restrictions is not just red states. Colorado has a liberal governor, and they've done
one out of 50
opening up. Well, I'm just saying it's in general it's had a red blue tint, but not entirely. And look, there's going to be opening up everywhere at some point. The question is, how you do it, and can you do it in a way that contains this spread to some degree? And there's going to be opening. I think. I don't have a problem with
I don't have a problem with opening at all. I think you have to be smart and you have to be rely on the data to do it, and that's not what's happening in my state, good old Florida. I saw something this morning, by the way, on TV. I really wanted to talk to you about, and I'm jumping ahead because there's just so much to talk about in a short period of time today.
Sure.
But it was on Morning Joe, and for gosh sakes, I can't remember the doctor's name. He may have even been one of the head guys under Obama. I don't know. But he was talking about, opening up, the cases seeming to go down, that there may be a warm weather component to all of this, which will slow it down a little bit in the summer. He was specific. It would not stop it by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, fine. And he said, and I looked at my data, and my data says that in Florida, because I think Mika said to him, or Joe said to him, what about Florida? What about Texas? Well, both in Florida and Texas, after they started to open up, the cases started to go up, 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 up. And our cases were up 437 yesterday. It's like a couple of days in, a week, not even a week in, and the deaths were up 50 or something to that effect. Now, in Florida, you got to be careful because we know, that Ron DeSantis is not putting out real numbers. I mean, the press went to court to prove that. And he's still redacting the numbers from reports that he's putting out there. But how do you get a doctor saying on television that the cases were going down in Florida when indeed they're going up?
Well, somebody's wrong. They can't be doing both. Look, I think people appreciate honesty, and that's why the governors who've been the bluntest about this, like Cuomo or DeWine, have the highest approval ratings at the moment. I think people want straight talk, and they can sort of tell when it's not.
So it's concerning because I listen, I listen, as you know, to a lot of cable and news stuff, and erroneous information is being spewed all the time, not just on Fox. Now it's happening on MSNBC, and I'm going, huh? And the anchors are sitting there with no knowledge of their own because their team should be giving them the facts so that when they come up against these people, they can respond appropriately and not just take whatever anybody says. In other words, we've got personalities running news organizations now. And it's a little scary. It's a little scary. Let's talk about the virus, unless you have something to respond to that.
No, I agree with you.
Okay. So, Trump needs to get people back to work because of that unemployment number, and the economy is just tanking, and now Wall Street's even saying, the stock market's going to go kaflooey too. Here we are. And they only have a few months to pull this together, by the way, because when comes September, October, this virus is going to increase and the flu is going to increase, and it's going to get crazy no matter how you look at it, right? So he's playing some pretty crazy games right now. But I want to talk to you about Fauci saying at the hearing the other day, schools should not go in, that there are more deaths than which I said in the opening, then are being reported. And of course, then the Trump juggernaut goes to town against Fauci. And you can see how, you can just see how each Trump, up his, whatever, they all give the same message out. Brit Hume, just go down the line and read their tweets. It's verbatim what they're told to tweet. How irresponsible is this? Or putting Ron Paul out to do Trump's bidding in the middle of a hearing on Capitol Hill that's supposed to give Americans information about, what's going on.
Well, I wouldn't assume that Trump is directing everybody to do what they do. I don't think Brit Hume takes his orders from Trump or
I disagree.
Ron Paul. Well, and I've known Brit Hume a long time. I don't think I think he agrees with Trump, and maybe there's no essential difference, but I don't think he's a pawn of Trump, and I don't even think Rand Paul is. I don't know why they have to be taking orders from Trump to be considered
idiots. I said it, you didn't.
Well, whatever, wrong, idiots, whatever. Look, there are a lot of people in agreement with Trump. We're not taking orders from Trump. I don't think that's
the reason I put it that
position.
Okay. Here's why I put it that way, and we're going to discuss the Flynngate, Obamagate, Russiagate thing in a minute. You see, I think that Trump is much more Machiavellian than people give him credit for. They always say, he shoots from the hip. Well, on some things, I don't think he does shoot from the hip. I do think, for instance, with Hillary, he knew exactly what he was going to gin up, and I think if you go back and you look at how it was programmed into the zeitgeist with the help of, an unwitting media at the time, he does coordinate these efforts. And I do believe he is coordinating a lot of things right now, which is why, as some of the people I speak to say, I have never been so overwhelmed by the news. He's just throwing mud out there to see what's going to stick, and we're following it all, going down all the rat holes, and it's like crazy time. So that's why I think, yes, I do think he has. I think Fox, I'll give you this. Maybe they're not being given talking points, but they're picking them up because the person who is being given, two people who are given the talking points, let's just say a Hannity or what's his face, I call him Bowtie Boy, though he doesn't wear it anymore, Tucker, they say it, and then it becomes, like the game telephone we played when we were kids, and it's just repeated over and over and over and over again. It concerns me. And then the media is caught between a rock and a hard place because it has to tell what's being said and report it, and that too feeds it. So I do think there's a method to Trump's madness. And I do think, whether witting or unwitting, you and I can argue about that, people like Brit Hume become pawn in his game, in Trump's game. Got anything? You went silent on me.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I don't think, as I said before, I think just because people come to the same conclusions as Trump doesn't mean they're being ordered to do so.
Right. All right. Well. We can argue that point, but it gets us to the same place, and that's something we're going to talk about in a minute. Well, where's Deborah Birx? Have you seen her? He pulled her off.
I'm not watching as much cable as you are, thank God. So I don't know if she's been at these things.
Yeah, she's just disappeared, darling. She's gone, baby, gone. I don't get that one. The other thing I do want to say about Fox, they're sitting there and they're telling everybody, go to work. It's safe.
Right. They're all at home.
And they're all at home. Do these people not get that?
Yeah, I'd love to see Laurie and Krim ride the subways. But the listeners and the listeners buy into it. That concerns me.
Oh my gosh. Another thing about last week, had the White House already found the cases of coronavirus in it? Did we discuss it? I can't even remember, but I do want to make a point about that, which is to say, if they can't keep the coronavirus out of the White House, that should be a clue to everybody we're in deep gaga. Right?
Oh, yeah. Right. Stephen Miller's wife, who was Mike Pence's press secretary, has the virus. There seem to be other people in the White House complex who have it. Yeah, look, it's a virus. It doesn't respect fences or borders or.
Yeah, and he's not helping it. Yeah, and he and Pence going a couple of days before, and thereafter, by the way, appearing with that mask. I mean, I don't get it. I totally don't get it. I do want to bring up Rick Bright, who's testifying later today, I guess, who Trump is now calling a disgruntled employee, a new whistleblower, top vaccine doctor who was ousted from his position in April, saying that Trump was unprepared for the virus and that the U.S. could face the darkest, quote-unquote, winter in modern history if it doesn't develop a national coordinated response. Does that make you nervous?
Yeah, that's comforting. I mean, look, this is,
Matt.
it's a pandemic. It's not...
it's not a little virus. It's a
not
big
a little virus. It's on a long march. It's going up, it's going down. It's some places that thought they had it under control don't, like Singapore. And, this is going to be a long struggle.
So are those of us who stay in place, are we cowards or are we smart?
No. You're wise. You're cautious, appropriately so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think we know some things. It does seem to be you're more susceptible if you're older. You're more susceptible if you have some underlying conditions. It's the better part of valor to be more cautious if you have, if that describes you. Sure. Look, I mean, why wouldn't you be cautious?
Yeah. See, that's the thing. And it's like, it's funny. I'm noticing in conversations with friends of mine, first of all, I think it was 24 million more people were out this week as the thing started to lift than weren't out. I don't know how long they were out, where they were, if they were going to work, if they were going to the store more, whatever it was. It's warm weather everywhere. Get out, whatever. But that's what the number was. But it's funny. My friend said to me the other day, I'm not letting anybody in my house. That's all. I'll go out because I have to go to the supermarket or I have to go here or have to... maybe I can do that. And when I come in, I wipe everything off. But I can't let people in my house because I can't control if they have something and I don't know. And I say, well, that's you do what you have to do.
Right. No, I think I think that's not unreasonable caution. I mean, at the same time, you have to remember lots of people are, delivering packages and working at the post office. And,
and you feel so badly for them.
In firehouses and, deployed on submarines and aircraft carriers. And, it's not everyone has the luxury of making those decisions.
Yeah.
So it's
a tough time.
It's tough.
It is.
Absolutely.
All right. Obamagate, Flynngate, Russiagate. I want to talk about that. I want to talk. I want to start here, Matt. I want to start with the Mueller report never exonerated Trump from the Russia collusion thing.
No, it did not.
And he was very clear about it. This does not exonerate him. And he made pretty clear that the reason that they wound up where they wound up was because they couldn't get the goods. They covered their tracks. So now we have the unmasking of Mike Flynn. Can you give us a little background on that?
Well, sure. I mean, the gist of it is that when we do intercepts of foreign nationals in the U.S. or overseas, generally we try to avoid taping Americans who are in those intercepts, and definitely try to keep their identities concealed as much as possible as the information goes up the food chain. In the case of Mike Flynn, who was then the national security advisor for the new President Trump in January of 2017, they came across, I guess actually the intercepted call was at the end of 2016 when he spoke with the Russian ambassador and touched on a number of topics, including, what would happen with Obama's sanctions on Russia once Trump took office in a couple of weeks. Anyway, he was unmasked as is a fairly common process. And, it became clear that it was him. And there was alarm inside the Obama administration about this. Sally Yates, who was then the acting attorney general, went to the White House counsel, Don McGahn, to alert him to this. And it didn't seem to be that controversial for a while. Trump did fire the guy. Part of the reason was that he had misled Mike Pence about whether he had had this contact with the Russian ambassador. And, it kind of lay dormant for a while. And then, of course, Flynn himself admitted to lying to FBI investigators, pleaded guilty to a felony, got basically, had his sentence deferred for a long time and looked like he was going to get a very, very minimal sentence because he was helping with the investigation. And then after the Mueller report, he started to take a more defensive stance, trying to withdraw his guilty plea, pushing back. And then the Justice Department, just in the last couple of weeks, came to Flynn's rescue and said, oh, that guilty plea he gave, there's really nothing to it. There's nothing wrong here. I mean, let's just forget the whole thing ever happened.
Right.
That was essentially what they argued to the court, and the judge in the case is not buying it at the moment. So it's all a little up in the air what will happen to Flynn. But I think, as you noted, or implied, the bigger political thing here is that they're suggesting that the Obama administration did something terribly corrupt by discussing the identity of Flynn in this call. I'm not seeing it at all. That they had every reason to be concerned that the incoming national security advisor was having these conversations with the Russians. They was lying to the FBI about the content of those conversations. They was lying to the vice president about them. And, I think they're just trying to gin up another, deflection from their own malfeasance and trying to blame Obama.
Right, for all of it.
So there you go. All
right. So let me go back to what I said. Yeah. Well, no, that's exactly what I wanted, because I want to tie this all together, because I see something here that I find absolutely outrageous. I said that, don't underestimate Trump. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he has all of this programmed, and he's thinking through everything. The Russia thing's not been, the collusion thing has not been cleared up. Richard Burr, who last night had his cell phone seized and is in deep gaga because he apparently sold stock when all this coronavirus thing came into play, is also the head of the Senate Committee on Intelligence, which has been looking into the Russia collusion case. And they are not friends, Mr. Burr and Mr. Trump. And in fact, Burr spoke to the committee that Fauci was talking to the other day and spoke against Trump. And then the next day, or less than 72 hours later, he had his cell phone absconded. So I'm trying to pull all of this together, because I see they're going after Adam Schiff. Oh my gosh, they're saying Joe Biden was on the list of unmasking. By the way, I just want you to know, because I looked this up, that Trump administration has ordered the unmasking of over 36,000 people in 3 years, which is higher than Obama ever did. Let me put that figure in there. So I think what I see going on here is this is all, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this is basically about the election, and Trump knowing that Russia's going to become a problem for him again. And I see Dirty Barr doing Trump's bidding. Every Republicans and Democrat lawyers are up in arms about what they, this thing with Flynn. But I see a coordinated effort in Flynngate, Russiagate, Biden-Obamagate. Which one did I miss? Because they're all out there, Matt. And they all are the same story, coming at it different ways, trying to discredit anything having to do with Russia.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you about Richard Burr, the senior senator from North Carolina, who, as you said, was chairman of the Intelligence Committee.
Still is.
The reason the FBI served notice on him last night and picked up his cell phone is because of potentially illegal stock trades. I don't think he was unfairly set up because he had taken a more
Kelly Loeffler did exactly the same thing. Why wasn't her phone taken?
Well, the evidence may not be the same in that case. I don't know the specifics. The FBI may have had him under greater surveillance. But if you're implying that Richard Burr is getting a raw deal because
I didn't say he's getting a raw deal, because people are stupid, Matt, and they do stupid things, and sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get caught, sometimes you don't, i.e. Mike Flynn. But I'm saying that if you look at the way this is being handled politically, I think there's something there. I think there's a coordinated effort here, and it's worth some intrepid reporter going and saying, okay, this is all coming together at the same time, just as we get into the crux of the election. And you don't agree with what Burr did, with what Dirty Barr did, do you? I mean,
what, with Flynn?
Mm-hmm.
No, I see no evidence he acted appropriately with Flynn.
Okay, so I'm just simply saying. Just hear me out. I'm just simply saying that there are, if I was in a newsroom right now and I was sitting with my editor, I'd be throwing all of this out and I'd say, let's get people out there, or I was the editor, and let's everybody look at this and see what's going on here and why all of this is coming together at the same time. And at the one thing that it all has in common is Russia.
Well, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I mean, if you're going to look at it through a totally political lens, they're endangering a Senate seat and a Senate election.
I think that, well, have at it. I mean, endanger a Senate seat, but keep the power, the presidency. I mean, sometimes these choices are tough. I think there's something there, and I just needed to throw that out.
Okay.
And add to that, they're also going after Adam Schiff and saying that Schiff never had any proof that there was a Trump-Russia collusion and that he was doing this with no proof. I mean, that's patently absurd. And the fact that Flynn admitted that he was involved and he was working for the administration. I mean, you know what I'm saying here, right?
I know what you're saying. And that's ludicrous.
So let's I want to get that out there, because I do think this is going to be something that's going to get very big eventually. So that's why I wanted to hear it.
I hear you.
The Supreme Court hearing on Trump's tax returns. What'd you think of that?
Well, I guess it looks like a mixed bag. That the House inquiry into his tax returns, the justices seemed a little more skeptical of, but they seemed a little more open to the one from the Manhattan District Attorney. I did think it was rich that Brett Kavanaugh, who worked for Ken Starr when Ken Starr was ripping up the city to find, oral sex on Clinton, was suddenly expressing grave concern about how these inquiries were disrupting the work of the president.
It was pretty rich. Yeah.
Pretty unbelievable.
Yeah. There's a split decision here, maybe, but on the tax returns, we won't see them before the election. Do you think?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I mean, they could refer the whole thing back to lower courts with some instructions of how to think about it. Right. But that doesn't give us Trump tax returns by November.
Yeah, and so this gets back to the overall frustration is this mob boss president just knows how to play the game, and the Democrats just can't seem to stop it at all. And that concerns me for the election, too. I just, they keep playing by the rules. And Trump keeps playing the rules.
No, absolutely. I think, the question of, will he leave if he gets defeated, I think so.
Becomes more and more real every day, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought I'd say that. I mean, I just laughed at everybody when they started that conversation, and it seems clear to me that that's exactly what is going on. And I guess in a way, the long way around, and don't think I'm being crazy, please. I'm not. I'm thinking my way through all of this. I do think Russia is still running things. I think he called Russia last week, right? On the Flynn thing, was it? Yeah. I'm concerned, Matt. I'm concerned. I never thought I'd get to here, but I'm concerned. And it's always good to have your more reasonable.
I don't know if I'm reasonable, but
compared to me sometimes. I actually think you think some of the same things I think, but you're more measured about saying it than I am, which is why we're a good team, because
there you go.
It is. All right. Election 2020, I do want to say this. The polls right now are not good for Trump in a lot of ways. On the virus, he's getting slammed. On CBS just before we went on air, the poll was like, really bad on the coronavirus. You see a little bit of tightening in some places since Trump stopped doing his day-to-day things on TV in his favor, but Biden is still ahead. Biden's staying at home. Mostly I'm concerned about whether he can get the kind of press he needs. I very quickly want to discuss with you, a Republican took over a seat, the one vacated by what's-her-face in California.
Right.
Yeah. And that was on who showed up to vote. Democrats afraid to get out. Republicans don't care. And then, Garcia won. But I want to talk to you about, very briefly, whether or not the Democrats are handling this well with Biden. Does it matter at this point? Should we still wait till after the summer to see if he can get himself out more than he did? Where are we on that?
Well, look, I think he's in the campaign. They're trying to figure out how you run a campaign in this new world. And, he was on Snapchat this week, reaching a big audience through that. And I think they got to figure out ways to keep him out there without leaving the house. And no one's quite had to do this before. So it's a challenge to them. I think they're lucky that Trump is, choosing to be out there so much in such a, crazy way every day. But, I think it's concerning how close the race is. We're in a depression.
Right.
There is a rampant disease. It ought to be a bigger gap than 4 points.
Well, that's why I'm concerned, and that's why I say to you, I think don't underestimate what Trump is up to with this Flynn, Obamagate, Bidengate, Russiagate,
Oh, sure.
whatever it is, and I think that's where all eyes, should be. And I don't want to see the media fall into the trap of, just being, a reverberation of what Trump wants out there. And I think until that's cleared up and we find a way for the media not to take the bait as much, Trump wins, as far as I'm concerned. Trump wins. Well,
we'll see what the world looks like in 5-6 months. It's
no election.
I certainly don't.
That's what he's going for. No election. He doesn't want the mail-in vote. And then you get to where people can't go out because they know it's going to, rise its ugly little head comes October, November. And he says we can't have an election because if you don't have a vote by mail in place, you're only, you can't ask people to go to the polls. It won't be fair. Hello.
Yeah. I mean, that is tougher to do when you're telling everyone to go out. And then you suddenly say you can't go out.
Yeah, not for Trump.
Well, that's true.
Not for Trump. Okay. We leave it there unless you have something brilliant that you want to say.
No, I fear we're going to be in a similar place a week from now. So hang tough.
You too, sweetie. You stay safe. They're keeping your land of D.C. Yeah, but you're closed down till June. Yeah.
We're closed down till June. So, yeah, you won't see me at any raves or bars for a while.
See you, kid. I'll talk to you soon.
Going to hunker down.
It's been swell.
Okay. As long as we have Netflix, we'll be okay.
You were listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts weekly at HalliCasser-Jayne.com and is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. Be sure to find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, on all your favorite apps. You can find the Halli Casser-Jayne Show on your Alexa device, too. Just say, the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Oh, and come play with me on Twitter at the Halli CJ Show. She's back. That's Candace Bushnell is back. Bushnell, the critically acclaimed, internationally best-selling author of Sex and the City, Lipstick Jungle, The Carrie Diaries, and more, gets real. Sex and the City, published in 1996, was the basis for the HBO hit series and 2 subsequent blockbuster movies. Her character is the woman we all wished we might be, and whose lives we just might want to have. Now Bushnell, a proud middle-aged woman, brings us Is There Still Sex in the City, in which she looks at love and life from a more seasoned vantage point, and yet another winner for the irrepressible author. By the way, a new TV series is in the works with Paramount TV, with Bushnell as executive producer and writing the pilot. You go, girl. No coronavirus talk here. Let's have some much-needed fun with Candace Bushnell. Hi, Candace.
Hi, Halli.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm doing really good.
It's so nice to have you here. Oh, my gosh. And oh, my gosh, I have to tell you, as a middle-aged woman, choke, I started reading Is There Still Sex in the City? And I started to laugh. And then I started to cry. And then I started to simmer with despair and with rage and with hope. And oh, my God, my emotions were firing in all cylinders. And I'm not even at the end. This is true. Oh, my God.
That is great. Well, the end is, it's, the end is funny. And it is a bittersweet ending because I don't want to, it's life. It's real life. I mean, I really wanted to capture the reality of this passage, which is, you know, it's ups, it's downs, it's hilariously funny because so many crazy things happen, but it also can be frightening and it can be lonely and it can be scary.
Yeah, you better believe it. You better believe it. I gotta ask you, how did you feel when you were writing it?
Well, at some point I was depressed I was sad when I was writing it because it was a little bit gonzo journalism because my father did die while I was writing the book.
Oh, God.
So I had actually set out to, it was just going to be stuff that was all funny, but real life came in. And because loss is one of the hallmarks of this passage, it really seemed important to deal with it and to not shy away. And for me, it was really about learning how to deal with loss and move forward. And there's something about being able to do that where you really feel like you do come through on the other side and somehow feel renewed.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's really literally how I felt. And, and so being a writer, I have to tell a truth.
Well, I think that's what you do all the time, isn't it? I mean, I don't know that there are many writers as you who are so damn truthful. You let it hang out, honey. It's great to read. It's great to watch. That's an art in and of itself, that ability to be so free and so honest. Where's that come from?
I think it really develops over time. But this is the crazy thing. Part of it, I feel, is my father dying. While this was very, very sad, the fact is that he was in his 80s and he had prostate cancer for over 20 years. Mm. So he had really survived prostate cancer for, 22 years. Then it came back, and he was always a pragmatic man we really talked a lot about life and the truths about life, but he was also very conservative and he was judgy. So at first when he died, I felt like, oh, I'm an orphan, which is what everybody feels.
Right, for sure.
And, that's a new mindset. But then I realized I am actually free. I don't have to worry about what the old man thinks anymore.
Can I tell you something? This is personal. Today's the anniversary of my dad's death. I know where you're coming from. It's bizarre. I was just going to post something on Facebook. I do that yearly and that's my thing to him. And then here you are talking about that. It does change life. And it's interesting to me because with this book, first of all, I did read something into it a little different than any of the other books you've written, because I thought that this really went to a deeper place of human pain. Just the life experience that we get. And as we hit that 60 thing, it becomes raw almost, particularly after losing your parents. So you're at raw, and this book is about at raw, which is why I was going with you, the ups and downs, this, that, and the other thing. But I have to say, being a middle-aged woman, what's the alternative, darling? That's the old expression. In American society, it isn't the greatest gift in the world. Other societies treat women of middle age with great umbrage. Here, it's like, oh, yeah, it could be over.
Here, yes, that's one of the hardest things I think about the whole passage is that, the societal messages to women, over 50, and it could be over 45, maybe to me, it's really, it's to the postmenopausal woman is you don't exist and you don't have value and we don't care about you. And yet, as you said, we're women, we got to go on. It's like we have to digest that, reject it, and move on. And the thing to me that's really great about this time is that, women today who are in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, these are the feminists and women who went out in the 70s and 80s and into the workplace to change the world and, to attempt what women hadn't before, which was to have it all. So this is a group of women who they're active, they're aspirational, they're also skilled. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. These are women who have chops and they're intelligent and, educated women. So these are still women who I think a lot of them would still like to change the world and very well may. And
it's very hard to stand up to the but. You have wrinkles, not creases like men, by the way, those sexy things that they get. We get wrinkles. And
right? I have to tell you, one of the things that, and I know that everybody worries about wrinkles and this and that, and I look at my skin and I see, it's going to wrinkle up. But just because you have wrinkles doesn't mean that you can't be beautiful.
For sure.
And I see so many older women now really taking grasp and taking ownership of being older, having wrinkles and gray hair and, being fashion models and inspiration and not caring.
I think that's true. We're going to talk about that in a minute on a different level. I want to get to this with you, and that is you've been compared to Jane Austen and my favorite, Edith Wharton, Dorothy Parker. You are such a keen social observer. It's wild. And I have to ask you, do you think you were programmed to pick up the cues of life's absurdities and other things from
yes.
Were you born with a unique lens in your eye and in your heart? Because it's weird how really right on you can be, I have to tell you.
I really do. I really do feel like I was. When I was a kid, I had some unusual skills. Like I could always tell you exactly what time it was, any time of day, without, looking at a clock or a watch or anything. I can always tell you what time it is. I can look at somebody and tell you their exact height and weight. So I always had some, interesting kind of observational skills. And my sisters and I, we were raised to be very creative. And that was really when we were very, very young. We were telling stories. I was always very, very interested in other people and in other kids. And sometimes I felt like I had it could be a little bit like a medium, where I could sense or feel things about people and their energy. And I know it sounds
no, it doesn't
odd,
at all. That's why I asked you, because I'm very observant of that's who you are, and that's what makes your writing and you so special. But I have to say, like, if you're walking down the street, or if you're sitting in a bar and you observe something that it ticks in your head, and you go, do you observe with a sense of humor? Or do you observe with a different kind of eye or sensation? How are you looking at it?
I'm always looking at it as, what's the sort of unexpected detail, I suppose. What's the reveal? But one looks around and one observes a lot, and you use about 10% of it. But I am always.
You're always
observing things. I'm and the other thing is I have a very, very strong imagination, which is, not evident in this kind of book, but I was writing a book about the 1770s, and, I can just really kind of transport myself.
It's interesting. Yeah, I have to say that personally for me, I find middle age very freeing. I like it. I like it a lot. And obviously you feel in your way you've come to the same place. But you write about how middle age can often be a time of this great upheaval in the women's lives. Middle age madness. Well, personally, I've had madness since I was a kid, so that's nothing new to me. But I'm curious about how you take it, and how people can, make it over to the other side.
Well, what happened was there ended up being a big group of single women who came to what I call in the book the village, but was, in reality, a little town in the Hamptons, a seaside town called Sag Harbor. And, there were 3 single women here, and then another one came, and then a couple of other friends got divorced. And then it seemed to snowball, and all of a sudden, even women who'd been single for a couple of years, or, maybe even single for 5 years or something, it was like a single woman's reunion. So, and there were maybe even 10 or 12 of us at one time, so that you really, if somebody was going to dinner or lunch, you have to invite the whole gang. And there was a lot of emotional upheaval going on because all of these women were dealing with divorce. They were also, a couple of them were dealing with, maybe a little bit of illness, and a few of them were also dealing with, a parental issue like the death of a parent. So there was a lot of emotion, and there ended up being quite a bit of drinking, and there were a lot of young guys around, and it was, a bit of a crazy time. And there were some fights, but what was very interesting was, were how vulnerable these women felt, having basically everybody had somehow the past 15 or 20 years of their lives had been kind of, ripped away or maybe shown to be a little bit false. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, there was a lot of emotion, and there were, some fights, and there was also, a reckoning of this idea of taking responsibility for what's happened to you. And that's part of it too. And there can be frustration on the part of friends where, didn't she know she was doing this wrong all along?
A lot of judgment, I
told her she should have done this. So there's a lot of judgment. We have a lot of judgment of each other's lives. I think partly because it's like, whoa, I don't want something negative to happen to me, but negative things happen to all of us.
This is a rite of passage.
It's just life.
Yeah, this is a rite of passage. And I don't know anybody in my group. You and I are the same age. I don't know anybody in this group who doesn't have the same thing. There's you go into this new part of it, and you got to look at the past, and so that you can go forward. And my dad used to say, people at this age, they either make it or they die, or they don't make it, and it's almost like a choice. You're either going to you help yourself through it, or you're going to die.
That. It's so amazing that you have said that, because, this is going to be a TV series. And
right, I can't wait.
We started working on it.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we have been talking about, is that this passage is, you got to make it, or you got to kind of give up and fade away.
That's it.
And it's,
It's a choice.
And that is exactly what it is.
It's a choice. But there is the other side. You know, I think you said it in the book. I don't know, maybe in an interview I was reading that you did. I can't remember where it came from, but it was a thought that came through my mind, which is, you know, we're different because we were so out there, because a lot of us wound up single and all this kind of stuff after all the other stuff we did. And here we are. And what our mothers didn't have to do, right? But what we have to do is we have to bear our souls and our bodies one way or 60. Now, come on, Candace. I don't care how much you embrace the wrinkles. It ain't the same.
You know, it is. You know, and people have to figure it out for themselves. This is what I've found. You know, first of all, older bodies are not incredibly unattractive. You know, a lot of people whose bodies are older, guess what? They're just fine. We don't know that because we don't ever see any older people's bodies, right? Because older people are constantly told to cover up. And, you know, I mean, that is something that one's got to deal with. And also one has to deal with the fact that, you know, everybody's older. And at first, I mean, you kind of have to get used to, like, hey, a sexually attractive person who's your age is, you know, in their 50s or 60s. And that's not something that, you know, we grow up with.
Well, I'm laughing.
So
I have to just throw this in there. It's like, I may be old, but so is he.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
exactly.
Hello, you know, but we don't think in those terms. I want to move on. Got a lot to get to, and we only have a few more minutes. Can we add romance into this conversation? Is there still sex and romance in the city?
Yes.
Right? We got to talk about romance a little here.
And it feels like in some ways there could be more romance because, you know, people who are this age, they're a little bit softer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it seems like that's the one thing that people this age, you know, do have romance, where it seems like people who are younger, you know, the millennials, the 30-somethings, I mean, what they complain about is a lack of romance.
Well, they don't do what we even did. That's what's interesting to me. No. That's scary to me, the generation not having that part of it. You know, we were out there, you know, looking for sex in the city, but we were looking for sex and romance in the city.
Yes.
Something's different now. And we should all be afraid about what that difference is, I think. I don't know what you think. And this Tinder thing that you have so much fun with in the beginning of the book. I don't know. This hooking up thing, honey, it's okay up to a point.
You know, it is okay up to a point. But when that's what's only on the menu,
right?
That's a problem. And, you know, I don't want to criticize like younger generations and, you know, because that's just something that people do. But they do seem, that it, you know, I get that a lot, that's the only thing that's on the menu, and it's not, you know, particularly good sex, and there isn't you know, it's the woman's pleasure isn't front and center the way it felt like it was in the 80s.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. And I just had to bring that up. Don't shoot me, okay, for this one, but I got to ask it. Does it really matter if there is still sex in the city? I mean, I like sex as much as the next girl, but you know what? There is life after estrogen. Yes.
You know, there very much is. And, you know, I think there's a huge amount of pressure on people to have sex. And I think something that people don't understand is that, you know, if you don't want to just have hookup sex, then it might be that you maybe are not going to have that much sex. And that's okay. I don't want to have hookup sex. I mean, I happen to have a boyfriend, so that's great. But if I didn't, you know, I don't want to do that. So does that mean that I'm not going to have a sexual partner? You know, maybe. I mean, the other thing that I found was that there were a lot of married men who wanted to have sex. Well, I'm not going to have sex with a married man.
They're giving me a red light. I got to go. But I want to tell you before we go, I love you. Thank you, sweetie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You have a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
I've been speaking with Candace Bushnell, author of the new book, Is There Still Sex in the City? For more information on the book, visit her website at CandaceBushnell.com. Thank you for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, and is available at HalliCasser-Jayne.com and on all your favorite apps. Be sure to visit us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and follow me on Twitter at The Halli CJ Show. Until next time, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.